how damaging are these auto tariffs likely to be for your members?
Potentially very damaging for our members, but also for transatlantic relations, for the economy as a whole. There's a lot of tension, obviously, globally, this comes on top of already very challenging times. We're at a watershed moment for industry in the midst of a huge transformation and fierce competition. This is very disruptive, and we really hope this can still be averted.
If it's not averted, Sigrid, give us your expectation of just what that damage looks like. We've seen the factory closures. We've seen job losses already at these major automakers, particularly in Germany. Do you expect to see an acceleration of job losses? Do you expect to see further factory closures if these tariffs are imposed and not removed?
Yeah, I mean, just maybe to start putting the magnitude of all of this a bit into the picture. The US are the second most important export market for European manufacturers, just after the UK. And the value of cars exported to the US represents about 40 billion euros. It concerns close to 800,000 vehicles crossing the Atlantic into the United States. That was 2024 figures. Now, that comes on top, of course, of operations that our members, European manufacturers, have in the US, where they also produce well above 800,000 vehicles each year. So this already, I think, signifies also the deep and intertwined supply chains and industrial relations built over decades to serve local markets, to serve customers well, to build interesting vehicles, advanced vehicles. And just the magnitude of that and the numbers I just gave you tell you something about, okay, at 25% tariffs, that represents a huge amount of money with impact that needs to be digested. It will have to be digested on the US side. Prices may go up, inflationary pressure, less consumer choice perhaps if manufacturers would make the choice to import not all of their models any longer. And this is just one option, and I can't speak for any of them. They will make their own strategic portfolio decisions. But indeed, also in Europe, it will have an impact, because if export opportunities are dampened, revenues will go down, there will be pressure on employment, the value chain, the supply chain will suffer. Again, also that will have directly and indirectly an impact on all of the economy over here as well.
Okay, given that impact, what do you want the EU response to be?
We'd like to see a balanced response, within all the constraints, and as far as possible. We understand that the EU must take an assertive stance, be firm in its attitude, and we've seen that also in the immediate responses, quite stark and vocal commentary coming out of the EU, the European Commission, but also several member states. They need to respond. We're now waiting to see what actual measures they may take. But we also insist, and we also hear that back from them, that the door to further conversations, to a negotiated solution, should remain firmly open, because an escalating trade war is in no one's interest. And we hope that this realization will sooner than later also sink in on the other side of the Atlantic, and that there will be talks about how can we resolve, what are the actual underlying issues, what are the concerns, what are the needs, and how can they be resolved in a way that doesn't do any damage.
So, I mean, so far there's little evidence that message is cutting through to the Trump administration, to the president himself. So what is your level of confidence, Sigrid, that this can be negotiated away?
No, you're right. It doesn't look very promising at the moment, but we should stay firm on that course and demonstrate also with facts what the impacts might be. And we can hear it left and right coming from industry, from analysts, from policymakers. We need to keep investing in that dialogue, in that conversation. At the same time, I think not just on the business side, manufacturers will take measures to do damage control control, to mitigate their risks. But we also need to look at Europe. I mean, you can't really influence what's happening elsewhere in the US or elsewhere in the world as much as you might want to. So you need to have your own house in order as well. And that means for Europe to make sure that it becomes stronger, more resilient, more competitive. So that's a great place for businesses to invest and to maintain their operations. And I think that's a huge task that Europe is facing now as well.
Sigrid, does that involve, are you lobbying for more support for the auto industry?
Well, I think it's too early to say because we don't know what measures exactly will take effect and for how long and what the impact then would be. But we do believe, and also with the strategic dialogue that Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has set up on the future of the automotive industry and recently announced an action plan also, I think there is a real realization that competitiveness, economic security altogether are really important, and that the auto industry is a strategic, critical industry to have within the boundaries of, in this case, our European economy. And that's where a lot of focus needs to be, and whether then support measures, but they can take many shapes and forms, whether they are part of that. I think that's a realistic discussion to have. But in the end, it will be a broad package of measures that can be taken and that will be necessary.
Are Chinese automakers the ultimate winner at this point?
Well, I don't like talking in winners and losers so much. I mean, it simplifies things so much. And I think that goes beyond the point. I think there's a lot of competitive pressure currently. Of course, for the transformation towards electrification, Chinese manufacturers are very well set up, and they also control very important parts of the value chain, of the supply chain for battery, from raw materials to refining components.